It is Monday, but the Bluebloods are here to make that Monday a little bit better for you guys. We start the episode off by discussing the situation in Manhattan, Kansas, and the potential boycott of the football team. And we then continue our recruiting re-rank, where we re-rank past recruiting classes. And today we analyze the loaded 2015 class. And we wrap it up, only 3 segments today, with another 2021 recruiting update. And we head to look at the Louisville Cardinals today. We have a full show, even though it's only 3 segments, so let's kick it off. We want to start with this because, as we mentioned last episode, this is a great movement going across college football. And this one kind of hits a little bit home for me here, but late last week, Jaden McNeil, student at K-State, president of the American First Students Organization at Kansas State, tweeted, "Congratulations to George Floyd for being drug-free for an entire month." And this kind of had the whole Manhattan community in the uproar, and everyone was real upset about this. And T. Danson, current K-State cornerback, tweeted that he would refuse to play for a program that tolerates such ignorance like that. And Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Year Joshua Youngblood echoed Danson's sentiment and called for the K-State administration to kick out McNeil. Youngblood then released a statement on behalf of the entire football team that stated that the football team would not practice, meet, nor play until the university created a policy that allowed a student to be dismissed from the university for displaying openly racist, threatening, or disrespectful actions to other students or a student group. So I usually defer to Brandon here, but I kind of want to take the lead on this one since this is happening, where I go to school. And, I want to start off by saying, I said this last episode, but I love to see these players finally realizing the power of their voices. I mean, an update from last episode, Mississippi is officially changing its flag, and it was kind of spearheaded by Colin Hill, calling out the state that the flag was disrespectful to minorities, specifically African Americans. And now in Manhattan, something positive maybe can come out of a horrible situation, in my opinion. And I just want to give you guys an update. Since information has come out recently, I don't know if it's out to the public yet, but I know some reliable sources that are within the SGA here. But McNeil is now utilizing far-right groups and social media platforms to harass university officials and players for denying his First Amendment rights and saying that they will fund him to sue the university if he is removed based on the tweet. And some boosters and alumni have also said they will sell their tickets if the kid is kicked out because he has the right to say whatever he wants. And we're not a political podcast, but I want to keep you guys, informed on the topics we cover in this show. And, before we switch back to football, I do want to say this since I am personally in this community here at K-State. And then I just want to say that I personally stand with these K-State athletes and the student body as a whole. And I think we all demand change here because K-State likes to claim that it's a family, and we can't claim to be a family and have people spewing this type of racist and sensitive rhetoric in our community. And I personally hope that the K-State administration and other officials make a swift example of McNeil and to show that this is not going to be tolerated. But Brandon, I kind of want to shift to you here, get your opinion and how this may affect the team as a whole. Let's just say if K-State is kind of got their hands tied and can't act appropriately and can't meet this demand that the K-State athletes have demanded. And also just a heads up that the basketball team and other athletes that have kind of stood behind the K-State football and said they will also boycott their sports if nothing is done.
Yeah, it's definitely going to impact these athletic programs of these schools. I mean, we saw, the demands of Kylan Hill at Mississippi State, and we see what happened as a result of that. These players truly hold the power. Now, I don't want to say they hold all of the power. They are still in college. They are still amateurs technically. It's nothing like what's going on in the NFL right now, where Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and other players are threatening to not play for their teams if if things aren't changed. But it's pretty similar. I mean, these players are still making money for their universities. The only difference is the talent pool is a lot wider in college, and so they could pull maybe some of these recruits, maybe some players that aren't willing to take such a stand. Uh, and regardless of that, I think what they're doing is right. They need to voice their opinions. No matter what that opinion is, I believe they have the right to say what they want, stand for what they want, and if that's what these K State players are wanting to do, if they're wanting to demand change by threatening to sit out, more power to them. I think they're standing up for a cause that they truly believe in. Um, and if they do end up sitting out, it's going to hurt the university financially. And I think that's exactly what they are starting to realize. They're starting to realize they do hold some of this power. And it's definitely something to see them utilize this, coming to the realization that they do have power, within their athletic abilities.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, if I was Chris Kleiman going into my second year after a really successful first year, I'm recruiting well, historically way better than K-State's recruited in the past. I mean, you have to be at the president's house right now, right? Begging him to do the right thing. I mean, you're like you said, you're talking about millions of dollars. I mean, how many recruits and players and just the perception of K State are going to suffer? I mean, if I'm a recruit, I'm committed to K State. I'm rethinking my commitment right now, at least. I mean, how could you not?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always going to be something at a school that's unsavory. We know LSU kind of faced the same sort of thing. They have a student who's coming in this year who's made pretty publicly like some racist statements. There were people calling for the president of LSU's job because he wouldn't deny him interest in the university. I can't remember how this played out, but um, it's definitely not a great look. It's happening all over the place. So, to see these athletes take a stand like they are is definitely something that we don't historically see. It's something that's fairly new to college football, and you have to love to see it happen. You have to love to see, or you have to be at least curious to see how it's going to pan out.
Yeah, and just also like I mean, and the fact that the players have to be frustrated, right? Because I mean, it seems like even though it might not be the case, I mean, the president already could have waited too long, and I think some players could have already made their minds up. I mean, this happened, I believe, on Thursday. We're already here recording on Sunday, and nothing's been done. The president's released two statements saying that it's not acceptable, not tolerated, but no tangible action has been done. And I mean, we both have been, at different big colleges where stuff like this has happened, and I'm sure there's a lot of legal things that he can't just act immediately. But I don't think that's going to fly for some people, especially in the climate of today. And I mean, McNeil's come back and came at players and called them homophobic slurs in his tweets and stuff. So I think even if the president acts like he should, I think there's some people that are going to be done. And I also want to talk about, as you guys, as our listening base who has been here since the beginning knows, I mean, graduated from Auburn, now I'm at K-State, and, the student passion for sports is totally different from an SEC school like Auburn to, K-State, who's a fairly successful Big 12 school. But I mean, Brandon, these students leave at halftime. I mean, the student section is empty at halftime for just about every single game. I think I've been to one game where people didn't leave, and that was the Oklahoma game. And that's fair enough because they're beating the number 3 team in the country. But for most games, everyone leaves at halftime. The student body does not take well to anything. I mean, if a quarterback misses a throw, the student body is revolting in the student section. And there's just other things where people don't really pay attention. I mean, the interest is tough to come by in a city like Manhattan, Kansas, and K-State. And I think while the thing you're struggling with is not only keeping the players here and keep making sure they're respected and safe and stuff, but what about the partial fan support you're going to lose depending on what you do here? I mean, you already don't have the full all the students' attention for these sports. And then what happens if you make the wrong choice and you not only lose a bunch of players, but you also lose most of the student body who also is not going to support this university?
Right, absolutely. It's definitely going to be a tough look for Kansas State, and seeing how they handle this is really going to sway the opinions of a lot of people.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, Chris Kleiman and other coaches at K-State have supported their players sitting out. And I believe Chris Kleiman said he would also join them in sitting out. So it's good that they have his support, but I think this is going to get real ugly before it gets better, Brandon, just based on some of the people I've talked to in the SGA said this isn't going to go away anytime soon. So this is going to be a long, dragged out story, and we'll keep you guys updated. But we want to go on to a much, I guess, happier note. We don't want to sit on this all day, and but we're going to go to our newer segment that we started, and that is where Brandon re-rank past recruiting classes, and we started with 2013. We're moving to 2015 today, and just a heads up in case you guys are new to our show or whatever. We only reanalyzed the top 100 recruits because 247 ranks like the top 1,500. We that would take literally forever. So we're going to do the top 100, pick our top 5 from there. And this 2015 class was loaded. It was headlined by Trenton Thompson, who went to Georgia, and Martez Ivy, who went to Florida, and they both have respectable college careers in the SEC. But as someone who has looked at this recruiting class, I don't think either of them are gonna make either of our top 5s. And neither of them made my top 10. Just that's how loaded this class was, and I was struggling with a little bit of bias here. There were some good Auburn players in this class. I know Brandon probably struggled. There was a few good LSU players in this class too. So Brandon, as usual, we're going to snake this, go in reverse order. So who is your number 5 recruit in this 2015 class?
So first of all, Zach, I want to say not only are you low down, but you're also dirty for only letting us analyze the top 100 because Joe Burrow was on this list at number
I knew that was coming
at number 210. So we couldn't list him, but he was in there.
He would most likely be number 1, guys.
Yeah, so I have 2 quarterbacks on this list, but to start, I'm going to go with my number 5 player of this draft class, and Zach told me we're not looking at NFL at all, so good thing for that. I'm going with Josh Rosen at my number 5 player in this draft class. I think he ended up.
Are you serious?
In college, he was fantastic.
But oh man, I can't wait to go through my list. I cannot believe you put Josh Rosen over some of these players. Oh my Lord.
I mean, you're acting like it's ridiculous. Over his career, he had a 61% completion rate. He had nearly 10,000 yards passing. And his true freshman season, he had 3,669 yards passing. In his junior season, right before he went to the NFL, he had 3,756. I mean, the guy, you remember him in college. I understand he was a little bit unsavory talking about schools in the SEC. And so we get it, Zach. You're biased. We understand. And so that's probably why you hate him. I don't really understand it. But I think he had a fantastic college career, and I think that he makes for a pretty good quarterback, especially in college. At UCLA, he did fantastic things, over his career. I don't really know what to say. I'm the heart guy. I'm going with what I remember, Zach.
You don't know what to say because he's not a top 5 player in this class. That is why you're running out of stuff to say. There's no way you looked at this class and he was a top 5 player. I'm outraged on this podcast right now.
I'm outraged.
I'm upset.
You can be whatever you want. There's a reason he was taken number 10 in the draft, right?
Yeah, there was, but it's because NFL teams reach for quarterbacks every year.
I don't know about that.
And listen, you say I have a bias. I only have 2 SEC players out of my top 5. The rest come actually. It's funny because there's a conference so I think has more players than even the SEC on my list because I thought the ACC was loaded in this recruiting class. But I don't know, man. Josh Rosen, I don't even know if he'd make my top 8 in this class.
Okay, well, who do you have at number 5?
Number 5, I have Derwin James out of Florida State, defensive back. He was also the 5th overall ranked recruit in the original cycle, so he's stuck right where he is. But
real original, Zach.
He sticks at the same position here, Brandon, but he probably outplayed his number 5 ranking anyways. But I think the top 4 people are going to end up going down as college football legends, especially my top 3. And that's probably going to be a recurring storyline throughout this segment. Me and Brandon have had players that ended up at 5, like Myles Garrett, who probably is one of the best players of our generation, but just because there's so many good players in that class. I mean, the reason that Derwin is not higher on my list, Brandon, is because his sophomore season was cut short due to injury. He only played 2 games his sophomore season, but he still already had 11 tackles and an interception in those games. But throughout his career, James, for me, showed the versatility and his ability to play all over the field. I mean, he played outside cornerback, slot cornerback. He played either safety spot and even walked down and played in the box as almost like an outside linebacker. I mean, he has a weird, okay, weird might not be the word, a unique size, 6'3", 215, and he's hyper athletic. I mean, in his career, he had over 185 tackles, 15 of those for loss as a safety, Brandon, had 5.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 1 of those went back for touchdowns, 15 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. He was top 6 in his conference for passes defended in 17 and also averaged 28 yards per kick return in 2017. I mean, for me, James is one of the best DBs in recent history and has even carried that talent. We can't look at the NFL, but I would say Derwin James has had a very successful NFL career so far, and that might be an understatement. He's probably one of the best DBs in the league, and I think Florida State, if they could, would absolutely have Derwin James back.
Oh, absolutely. No, fantastic player.
I mean, yeah, so I'm taking Derwin James over Josh Rosen. I just want to say, and since we're snaking, I'm taking this number 4 player over Derwin James as well, and that is Christian Wilkins out of Clemson. He was the number 24 overall player in this class originally. He had played all over the defensive line for Clemson and was an intricate part in their national championships they have. And he's actually one of my favorite players of recent memory. I really like this kid, and I think he's one of the most unique blends of talent on the defensive line. Brandon, did you know Dabo let him play DB in their spring game his senior year?
I did not know that. That's very interesting.
He's 6'4", 310 pounds, Brandon. But guess what? In his sophomore season, was top 10 in the ACC in passes defended.
Okay, pretty good.
And in his career has 2 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdown. Wilkins was trusted by Dabo, and I think he's one of the most athletic defensive tackles we've ever seen. I mean, to be over 300 pounds and have the athletic ability to keep up in the secondary, even if it's a joke in the spring game, is pretty outrageous. But, I mean, throughout his career as a defensive tackle, racked up over 190 tackles, 40.5 tackles for loss, Brandon, 16 sacks as an interior defensive lineman, and 4 forced fumbles. And for me, the reason he's up over Derwin is because he started 11 or more games all 4 years at Clemson. He was pretty much a 4-year starter. And for me, he was probably, outside of maybe Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, probably one of the most intricate pieces in making Clemson the powerhouse it is today. I mean, he was part of that defensive line group with Dexter Lawrence and Colin Farrell, who came back for their senior season when they were all going to be first-round picks and won the national championship in 2018. And for me, Wilkins is going to go down as probably one of the best defensive linemen in Clemson and ACC history. And he also has the personality on the field to make him more remembered than maybe someone a little bit more reserved like Myles Garrett. And I think Christian Wilkins is underrated, and I think he falls at 4 for me here.
Yeah, Zach, and I couldn't agree with you anymore. As a matter of fact, I actually have him at number 4 as well. So that worked out really well. You did all the talking for me, so now I can just move on to number 3.
Fair enough.
So my number 3 player, I mentioned I had 2 quarterbacks in this list, and everyone who knows me knows that I let 1 year do all the talking for me, and that's why I'm going with Kyler Murray at number 3 here. Kyler Murray, what was he? He was like, I can't remember his ranking in this list. I think it was 30,
he was 34th.
34th. Yeah, he was 34th. Going into college, obviously committed to Texas A&M. His freshman season, he played in 8 games. I mean, he did what he did. You know, he was
not great.
Not great. And then he went to Oklahoma and played behind Baker Mayfield. So he ended up playing in 7 games because that Oklahoma team was just dominant. I mean, he didn't do much there. He only I believe he only had 21 passing attempts that season. Not great. Yeah. But you know what he did? His junior season, he went on, led Oklahoma, and won the Heisman Trophy. with just I'm talking absolutely insane year. He had a 69% completion percentage with 4,400 yards passing. He averaged 12 yards a pass, 42 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Like I said, he won the Heisman Trophy. I mean, what else is there to say? I feel like I'm running out of words on today's segment. I don't know why. I really couldn't tell you why. I'm trying my best, guys. I'm so sorry. But
if there's a player you shouldn't run out of words for, it's Kyler Murray. I mean, that kid was amazing.
I mean, he did all this at like what 5'10". This kid's ridiculous.
Maybe I think if he was wearing high heels,
playing in the major leagues as well. I mean, this guy is just an athlete, and I mean, he might be the shortest, best quarterback in the NFL right now for sure, and maybe for a long time coming now.
Russell Wilson wants to have a word with you, but I'll let it slide.
Russell Wilson's a little bit taller.
We don't have an NFL podcast, so we could debate that another time. But do not disrespect my man Russell like that. But I'm just going to skip ahead. Brandon, Kyler was number 2 on my list, and this is the second Heisman winner that's come in second on my list. And I know that might sound outrageous, but this class was just insane. And like Brandon said, his freshman year at A&M, I mean, 686 yards in 8 games. That's all right. But he had 5 touchdowns and 7 interceptions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just tough. And the reason he falls to 2 for me, he probably could have been 1, but he really only had 1 good year, like Brandon said. And my number 1 player played pretty much all 4 years at a bigger program and did just as well. And like Brandon highlighted his stats, but I just want to say this. I mean, his passing yards and passing touchdowns ranked 3rd in the country, guys, in the entire country. And he had only 7 interceptions, and he threw the ball over 370 times in his last season. And he was the 5th leading rusher in the Big 12 as a quarterback with over 1,000 yards rushing, almost 1,100. And he was 4th in the Big 12 with 12 rushing touchdowns. I mean, and Brandon mentioned the Heisman Trophy, but people forget how close that Heisman race was. I mean, Tua had one of the best statistical seasons we've ever seen for a quarterback, and Murray outdid him. And it should just show how dominant he was. And not only the Heisman Trophy, Brandon, he won AP Player of the Year, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, the Davey O'Brien and the Manning Award all in 1 year. I mean, he probably had, outside of, this past season with Joe Burrow, but at the time, he had one of the most decorated seasons of all time for a quarterback, for a player.
Yeah.
And if Murray could have put together the longevity on his resume, then I think he easily would have been my number 1 player in the class. But I just want to say this, guys. He might be 2, but Kyler Murray is going to be looked back upon as one of the best players to ever play college football, and he'll go down as one of the best quarterbacks of our generation. And I don't think we could take anything from him, even though he had a slow start at A&M, because let's be honest, at that time, A&M wasn't really built for anybody other than Johnny Manziel. I mean, we can be honest here, but I'll skip backwards. I know this is kind of confusing, but I wanted to get my word in on Kyler Murray. My number 3 player, Brandon, probably my favorite linebacker that I've ever watched in my lifetime, and that's Roquan Smith. And out of Georgia, he was the 48th ranked player overall. And I don't think there was a play when he started where Smith wasn't making the tackle, or at least was a key in stopping that play. And I think Smith might have been the most talented player in the class, but like Kyler Murray, he didn't put it together for all 4 years. He only fully started 2 years at Georgia, and it's still in those 2 years, Brandon, over 250 tackles, 20 for loss, 6.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 3 fumble recoveries. I mean, in 2017, he led the SEC in solo tackles and was top 5 nationally. He was top 5 in forced fumbles in 16 and top 3 in tackles for loss in 2017. And you want awards on this list? He won the Buckus Award, the SEC Defensive Player of the Award, and was a consensus All-American. And there was talk late in the season that he should get a Heisman vote because he was the best defensive player of that year. And 2017 is the year that Roquan and this Georgia Bulldogs team went all the way and was really 1 play away from winning the national championship over Alabama. And That Georgia team is probably one of the I'm sorry, this might be a little controversial. I know Georgia won a championship in the 80s. That Georgia team is probably the best Georgia team of all time, honestly. And they just fell victim to a really, really good Alabama team on a bomb second in 26th play. But for me, I think Smith is probably the best linebacker that's ever come out of Georgia in a long line of elite linebacking talent. And I think he's probably one of the better linebackers in SEC history. And, it makes it outrageous that he's only third in this class. But once you hear my number one player, it's all going to make sense to you guys.
Okay. So with my number two player, I'll go ahead and move forward. I've got a player. Everyone knows that I'm an offensive-minded guy. So I don't know. I have Saquon Barkley. I think over his career, he had just absolutely consistent, insane numbers. Obviously capped off with the 2016 season that, he just went absolutely insane. But even his freshman season at Penn State, he started 11 games. He had 182 carries for 1,076 yards. He averaged 5.9 yards a carry, 7 touchdowns that year. 8 total, 7 on the ground. I think that's pretty good for a freshman in the Big Ten, especially at a program like Penn State. Moving forward onto his 2016 season, his sophomore year, he started 14 games with Penn State. He had 272 carries for 1,496 yards, 5.5 yards per carry, 18 rushing touchdowns, led the Big Ten in rushing touchdowns, 4 receiving touchdowns, and he started returning kicks that year. He didn't do a whole lot that year in terms of kick returns, but his junior season, his final season at Penn State, he had 217 carries for nearly 1,300 yards, 5.9 a carry, 18 rushing touchdowns again, led the Big Ten in rushing touchdowns once again, and he had 3 receiving touchdowns. And I think I'm not going to say the most impressive part. I will say the most impressive part is that he added on these kick returns, onto his repertoire. He had 15 kick returns over the span of the season for nearly 500 yards, and he took 2 to the house. He averaged 28.4 yards per return his junior season. It's absolutely crazy that he wasn't even he didn't really win awards in college either, which is a really crazy thing. Yeah, he got Offensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten in 2016 and 2017. But, other than that, he wasn't up for any awards. And, I think that's just a testament to how stacked this class was. But for me, he kind of flies under the radar for players in this class. I know it's kind of hard to say that Saquon Barkley flies under the radar, but I truly think he did here.
Brandon's out here cheating, not using the composite. I was sitting here, I was like, man, I did not see Saquon in the top 100, but he was 120th in the composite, 80th in the 247. So I was like, did I totally overlook Saquon? I did not, but we'll let Brandon slide there. I like Saquon. He would probably be in my top 5 if in the composite he was in the top 100. I was sitting here, I was like, I went back through while you were talking. I was like, there's no way I missed Saquon. Because I got everyone else's name.
77. And I was like, yeah, 77. Let's do it.
Killing me. So I thought you were going to go with like Darius Geis or somebody, being the LSU fan you are.
I left Darius Geis off of this list, which is nuts. I know that I probably should have. I should have let my biases get the best of me, but I figured
number one.
Yeah. No, well, my number one should be a
Dante
surprise.
Jackson.
What's that?
I said you want Dante Jackson at number 1?
No, I'm gonna put Blake Barnett at number 1, actually.
That's real bad.
I know, it's tough. No, my number 1 player is a player that continues to impress me even to this day. And I don't think that you're going to have him, Zach, which is kind of nuts to me that he's not going to end up on your list. I heard you say you had a 4-year player on your list. I've got a player that finished after his junior season, in Mika Fitzpatrick.
Yeah. It's mine. I said 4, I meant 3. It's Mika. It's not even close.
I was about to say, I was about to burn you up. It just had to happen.
On this podcast, I've said Mika Fitzpatrick is my personal favorite player that I've ever watched in my life, outside of maybe Reggie Bush. So my favorite defensive player.
Well, Zach, go ahead and take it away, because I'm obviously pretty short on my words today, and there should be a lot to say about Mika Fitzpatrick.
I got you covered, guys. My respect for this guy runs deep, and I think he's underappreciated. I hate Alabama, guys. My hatred for Alabama runs even deeper, but Mika Fitzpatrick was amazing to watch. I watched most of his games, and for me, Brandon, this is not a hot take at all, in my opinion. I think he's the best SEC defensive back of all time.
Oh, absolutely.
And he comes in at number one. And if you wanna argue, hit us up in the comments when we post this episode. Let us know. We can bring you on the pod. It don't matter. We can go at it because Mika Fitzpatrick's number one. I mean, as a safety, over 170 tackles, 16 and a half for loss, 9 interceptions, and he took 4 of those interceptions for touchdowns. He had 24 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, and this is all while playing in the toughest conference of college football at the time. And you want decorations, you want awards, a 2-time consensus All-American, a Benark Award winner, and a Thorpe Award winner. And his just ability to be all over the field at all times has blown my mind. He has the explosiveness unlike any player I think I've ever watched. And he's 11th in NCAA history in interceptions taken back for touchdowns, and he's 3rd in SEC history. And he's also top 20 in SEC history in passes defended all time. And that's as a safety. That's not even as a main corner.
Right.
And he led the SEC in interceptions in 2016. And, he was top 11 in interception return yards in SEC history. And I mean, it blows my mind, man. And, Nick Saban's not one to gush about players, but if you don't think Mika Fitzpatrick was the most trusted and beloved defensive players or just players all time under Nick Saban, just go watch some of the interviews, man. Nick Saban loves this kid. Nick Saban understands how talented this kid is. And I think if it came back to it and they got to re-rank this class, I think every single school in the country would put Mika Fitzpatrick one. I just want to say this. He is so underappreciated because of where he went. If he was doing this stuff on any other team other than Alabama, because they're so loaded and he probably got help by so-and-so and this and that, it's like, I promise you Mika Fitzpatrick would be more appreciated if he went and played at, let's say, Michigan or Washington or Oregon or something like that. But Mika Fitzpatrick's going to be in the College Football Hall of Fame one day, and I think experts will look back as rank Mika as one of the best DBs to ever play college football.
Right, absolutely. And you might even be underselling it, Zach, because this guy, it's not only all the stats that you've mentioned to this point. It's some of like the intangible things too. Like, he's just one of those guys that you want in the locker room. He's a guy that made the guys around him play better. I don't know. I mean, he's your favorite player that you've seen play. And that should be a testament in and of itself. This guy is just a fun guy to watch play. Obviously, we're not talking about the NFL, but if we were, I think everything we just said still rings true. I mean, he is.
I must say he's on his way. I don't like to put I guess too much expectations on the player, but his trajectory is NFL Hall of Fame right now. He is. Him and Derwin and maybe Jamal Adams are the 3 best, safety / hybrid type guys out there. And I think Mika, even if he, moved the corner like the Dolphins were kind of playing him at, he's one of the best corners in the NFL as well.
Yeah, Zach, and you wanna make yourself feel bad for a second, real quick.
I guess we can.
This is the class of 2015. What class were we in?
Yeah, that's the same class we were in.
Yeah, and here's what we're doing. I mean, we just talked about Kyler Murray and Mika Fitzpatrick and Saquon Barkley, and now we're Christian Wilkins. I mean, we're just talking about these guys. There's no podcast that's talking about us.
Right? I mean, they're making millions of dollars to play, the game, football, the game, everyone listening to this and we love, and we're sitting here not doing that. We're not making millions for this. We just talking about how, I wish I was Mika Fitzpatrick, I guess.
Zach looks up to him like a father, but he actually might be older than him.
I must say, I actually could be older than him. But I don't know. And, this one kind of hits home too, because, going into the draft after Mika declared, I was a Dolphins fan. We were drafting 11th, and I'm like, "There's no way Mika Fitzpatrick's going to fall to 11." But I said, you can go look up my Twitter, whatever. I was saying Mika Fitzpatrick was the best player in this draft, and he fell to 11. The Dolphins got him. I was celebrating, and then we trade him, and I'm like, "What are we doing here?" What we traded him and Laramie Tunsil, like 2 guys who were supposed to be top 5 picks that fell to us in the draft, and we just got rid of them.
I don't know. To me, it's I understand the Dolphins, and we're turning this into an NFL podcast real quick. I understand the NFL. The Dolphins are trying to rebuild. I feel like Minka Fitzpatrick's a pretty good player to rebuild around.
Yeah, you know what? Don't call me an expert here. I just have a college football podcast, but I feel like I've played Madden franchise enough that like if you're rebuilding, don't you get rid of the old players on expensive contracts, not the two best players at their position on rookie contracts? I mean, I felt like that was if there was a book written on how to rebuild a franchise, wouldn't that be page like at least two?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. The Dolphins have a
They're
lot of
paying
work
him
on.
like $500K a year, and they're like, you know what? He's too expensive. We got to move him. And it's like, for what?
Draft picks that
And,
they're just
and
going to
yeah,
keep they're going to keep at it with these draft picks, which they're just wasting away
yeah,
anyway.
yeah. You know who really wishes they had Minka Fitzpatrick? Tua, so that he get the ball back, so he can get sacked another 6 times. It's just I'm upset. I'm really like if we had an NFL podcast, I'd be way more salty than I am on this college football
Zach,
podcast because being a Dolphins fan, man, it's healthier to do a lot of other things than be a Dolphins fan. I won't get into the details, but there's a long list of things that you should rather do than be a Dolphins fan.
yeah, Zach, you said it best. Before you have a heart attack, let's go ahead and move on.
Yes, we'll go on to another segment. Not in the NFL. We're going to go down a league into high school. And as we usually do, we end the show with an exclusive recruiting update. Check out the past 2 months of episodes to catch up on updates, and we head to Louisville, Kentucky to analyze the Louisville Cardinals 2021 class here, and they're trying to follow up a really good class last season, a top 10 ACC class, and Scott Satterfield is looking to build another ACC contender in the coming seasons. And this class is headlined 4 top 500 recruits. Listen, guys, tailor your expectations. We're talking about Louisville here. We're going to get into teams that they're not going to have a top 100 recruit. To have 4 top 500 recruits for Louisville is excellent. So tailor your expectations here. I know all of us root for teams that are, always get top 100 recruits, but try to keep things in perspective for you guys. But the Cardinals still have a lot of spots open. They're in contention for some pretty good prospects. And so Brandon, what is your take on this class? And, we've all remembered the Lamar Jackson years when Louisville was a national contender. Can Scott Satterfield get this class together and get Louisville back to that national prominence?
Well, you certainly have to hope so. And kind of leaning back onto the last segment a little bit. I mean, they landed Lamar Jackson, which do you remember where he was ranked in the composite, Zach? He
Very,
wasn't.
very low.
He was not ranked in the composite, which is insane to say. And then we saw where he turned out. So I guess anything's possible, especially in Louisville. To me, it's crazy to see a team that just 2 seasons ago, what was their record? I mean, were they 0-12?
I think they were 1-11, if I'm not mistaken, or like 2-10. They had a really bad year, but this past year they bounced back really well.
They bounced back really well. I mean, just to think that 2 years ago they had that record, and now their recruiting class is ranked 18th in the country. They're 4th in the ACC. I mean, that's rebounding from last season when they were 42. They were 42nd nationally and 7th in the ACC. I understand they have 18 hard commits already, which is kind of high for right now, but that's not a terrible thing. I mean, they have 2 4-star players, and before like Zach said, we have to tailor our expectations. Louisville's a team that's like relatively new to the Power Five. I mean, it's just been in the past decade or so that they moved up to Power Five. They moved up to the ACC. So yeah, absolutely tailor your expectations. But there's a lot of very quality players in this recruiting cycle. And the crazy thing is, Zach, you know how many recruits they have from Kentucky? Not a single one.
Yep, exactly.
They're recruiting all over the place. I mean, they have 4 recruits from Florida, 4 from Georgia, 4 from North Carolina. I mean, they're hitting all these huge hubs of talent. And they're doing, it looks like, really well because they have 18 hard commits at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely impressed with the national impact this class has. I mean, Brandon, you mentioned it. No recruits from Kentucky, but they have Washington, Illinois, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and other states here. And I was really shocked because I was not expecting to see that from Louisville, who a lot consider still a kind of rebuilding program here. And for a COVID altered recruiting season, for them to be going out and getting these recruits from all these other states is I don't know how they're doing it.
Yeah, and you mentioned it already, but they have 1 recruit from Washington and they have 1 recruit two from Illinois, but their recruits from Washington and Illinois are up there at the top of their recruiting class. I mean, Jere Williams, obviously, he's an outside linebacker from Washington. Who knows how they landed him? 4-star guy. I mean, an absolute monster. And then second on their list is Benjamin Perry, another 4-star player out of Chicago. And Louisville is making this much of an impact, and I think you have to give a lot of thanks to Lamar Jackson for that. And those years that they were so great. I mean, you could even give thanks to players like Mekhi Becton. I mean, you see these players taken so high that, I mean, there's these recruits that actually want to go play for Louisville and go be developed by Louisville. And it's kind of mind-boggling to see this rebuilding program, like you said, pick up these caliber recruits.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, like, I think Louisville is one of the more underrated teams, I guess, in the country. Like, people don't really consider them a powerhouse because they're not right now. But I think that we've seen multiple coaches go there and be successful. And I think you just have to have the right coach that can. So for me, so programs like, I would say, like Louisville, Kentucky, these like mid-major kind of like in Power 5 conferences, but have the potential, but you have to have the coach that understands how to develop talent. I think K-State falls in there too. It has potential, but Oklahoma State, you have to have a coach that can develop talent, not just go out and get 5 stars all the time. Like, you have to be comfortable with getting these lower 4, 3-star, 2-star recruits and turning them into superstars, kind of like you saw with Lamar Jackson. I think when you're coaching or recruiting at a mid-major program like this, I think you have to be better at recruiting than even someone like Nick Saban is.
Yeah, absolutely. You really do, because I mean, where is that draw to Louisville? Which what college player or what high school player in this country, like, look outside of, I guess, Kentucky, which is kind of crazy because they don't have any recruits from Kentucky at this point. Um, really look at Louisville and say, you know what, that's where I want to go. I want to go play for Louisville. There's not a lot of them, but the ones that do have to be persuaded somehow, and it looks like Louisville's doing a great job of that.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I just want to move on to the recruits here. I mean, their top recruit in the class is Jair Williams, and 325th overall player, 24th outside linebacker out of Washington. I mean, their top recruit is out of Washington, guys, all the way across the country. And I just want to say this. I watched this kid's film. I've done a little bit of research on this kid. He might be listed as an outside linebacker, but I think he's more of a safety, to be completely honest. And depending on how he develops with his size and what the Cardinals need here, I think Williams is going to be a safety. I mean, he's hyper athletic and he's super, super physical. And those are the 2 traits that I think stand out in his film. And he has excellent ball skills for someone listed as a linebacker. And I think that makes him very, very dangerous if he puts on a little bit of weight, fills out his frame, and moves down into the box. I mean, throwing across the middle or sending, covering tight ends and stuff. I think Williams can be real dangerous in that type of ability. And he's a 2-sport athlete, Brandon, in football and basketball. And his dad was actually a first-round NBA draft pick in 2009 from the Nets. And so he comes from an extremely athletic background, and I think that basketball background helps him in coverage because he has the agility and side-to-side movement to really roam the middle of the field. And I think he's going to be a dangerous middle of the field safety, and that he's really going to excel in run support. I mean, Brandon, he's a junior in high school. He's 6'3", 197 right now, and for me, that's too small to be a linebacker in the ACC. And I think he's got to get to at least 210, 215, maybe even more, right? I mean, a 6'3", 205 safety is going to be a problem. And I think his size and strength are the 2 biggest critiques based on his film and all the research I've done. But I think both can be improved upon once he reaches to campus with the proper weightlifting program, proper nutritional program, and just a proper coaching and the ability Louisville has shown to develop some of these players. I think Williams is going to be an excellent addition to this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you there more. I think he's he's a crazy good player. Moving him back to safety is going to be a problem. It is. I mean, he's going to be a huge safety. And I think that he has another full year to put on more weight before he gets to college. Then he has an entire off season before he starts actually playing, assuming he signs, he enrolls early. Then he's got time with his team to grow, to put on more muscle mass, and he could end up playing outside linebacker. And I say all of this to kind of preface, Zach and I normally do a player that kind of flies under the radar. I'm going to go ahead and do mine. Zach, I don't know if you had more to say, but I'm going to go ahead and do my player that's flying under the radar.
Bud.
Yeah, so I've got Jackson Hamilton out of Roswell, Georgia. I mentioned how Louisville is really going out and taking these players from these states that have, I mean, just great football talent. And I think Georgia is one of those states. And I think that Jackson Hamilton's just, I mean, the epitome of that state. I mean, this guy, he's an inside linebacker. He's listed at 6'1", 205, which, again, Zach already mentioned it. That's small for an outside linebacker. This guy is recruited to play inside linebacker in the ACC. But like I said, I think he's got time to grow. I think he's got time to get a little bit bigger. I think 6'1" is a good height for an inside linebacker. I think he puts on a little bit more muscle mass. Maybe he can truly play that position. Like I said, he has a little bit of time to develop. But watching this guy's film, I mean, he's just an absolute headhunter. He's going to fill those gaps, but not only that, he can drop back into coverage. One interesting thing that I did see about his film is that this kid also played both sides of the ball in high school. He played linebacker. He also played running back. And this man is absolutely filthy when it comes to the running back position. I mean, he is not afraid to run you over. And I think that translates really well into his linebacking ability. He's a player that's going to make the big hits. Not only the big hits, he's going to make the hits that matter when maybe it's not straight up. Maybe he's chasing you from the other side of the field, but this guy can get it done. I think that he's going to be a serious problem in Louisville.
Yeah, because I think he also played multiple positions, I believe. I think he played a little bit of DB and safe, and I think he played both CB and safety. And so I think he's a versatile player. And
he came from a pretty small high school. He came from Blessed Trinity Catholic, which is it's a Class 7 quadruple A high school. So not the biggest high school that you can get in Georgia. A fairly small school. But I mean, they were state champions, and I think you have to give this guy a lot of credit for that state championship.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I do want to talk about Benjamin Perry. He's the number 2 recruit in the class. Oddly enough, he's a safety, so it's kind of funny that I thought the number 1 guy was going to project as a safety, but Perry's another 330th ranked type player, 21st safety out of Chicago, another state not Kentucky, and he dominated last year throughout the Chicago League. I mean, 75 tackles, 9 interceptions, one of those taken back for touchdowns as a safety. That's outrageous to have that many interceptions. You see that a lot maybe from high school cornerbacks, but not safeties. And his best skill is the ability to roam the middle of the field, and he's pretty fast on film. I mean, he doesn't have a verified 40 time though, but based on his film, he's going to have plenty of speed to fit into any system. And when the ball's thrown, man, he can break on it and he can pick it off or break up the pass immediately. And he has really good size, in my opinion, for a safety. I mean, he's 6'3", 190, maybe 200, 205, like I said, is going to be perfect. And I think he has the frame to carry that weight, but he's long, rangy, and he stays engaged with wide receivers early, and he can make athletic plays on the ball because he has really, really long arms. And there's a few spots in the film where he jams the receiver at the line, and he usually turns those plays into picks or broken up passes if the quarterback for some reason throws his way. And I really like Perry, and if Perry develops like he should, I think Perry and Williams are going to make for a very, very dangerous duo in Louisville, especially on the backside of that defense. And, so for my underrated prospect, Brandon loves this. But, I mean, listen, guys, I love 247 and their rankings, their composite, their individual, whatever. But sometimes I see this prospect and I wonder, how did they miss on this guy? And today, Brandon, he's probably the lowest ranked recruit that he's technically not ranked, but I did some research. He is the 1,325th ranked recruit in the country. He's the lowest ranked recruit in this recruiting class out of North Carolina, and it's Raheem Craig.
Okay.
And I think right now they have him projected as a DN, Brandon, but Power 5 football, ACC football, at 6'3", 212, that's probably too small to play defensive end in the ACC. Right. But I think even though he's the lowest ranked commit and he's small, he could have the greatest potential out of everyone in this class. And I think Buck or outside linebacker is going to be in his future, but this kid has elite pass rushing skills. One click on this kid's film and you're like, okay, this kid's for real. How is he not even in the top 1,000 recruits? And I think it's because the area of North Carolina where he played is very small, and a lot of these small town recruits don't get the benefit of the doubt that some of the players in bigger districts get. And I think his hand movement is some of the best I've seen, where, I mean, blockers can't get their hands on him, man. He has excellent, just defensive skills to get those offensive tackles' hands off of him. And being so small, he has excellent bend around the corner, and most of these offensive tackles that he plays against aren't athletic enough to really defend him, and he tears them up, Brandon. I mean, last season, Brandon, as a defensive end, 89 tackles, 21.5 tackles for loss, 10.5 sack, and 3 forced fumbles.
I was about to say, watching his tape, because I watched it preparing for this segment. He just has like 6 minutes of tape they're all tackles for loss. It's insane. Like sacks. Catching the running back as soon as the ball's handed off. This guy is a monster, and I don't understand how he flew under the radar either.
I mean, for an undersized defensive end to have 10.5 sacks, 21.5 tackles for loss, and almost 100 tackles as a DN, that's outstanding. I don't care what district you play in. I don't care how big you are. That's outrageous. And based on his film, any size that Craig may be lacking, the physical play he brings to the field makes up for it. I mean, Brandon, you watch this film. I mean, the film is full of blockers being blown up, big hits, playmaking ability that, he will bring his 110% every single play. And I think that's more important than size at this point, especially as a junior, because we've seen people have growth spurts way later than junior year of high school.
Absolutely.
So if this kid shoots up, he easily could have the talent of a 4 or 5-star recruit and be at Louisville as an unranked recruit.
Right. And you mentioned the thing about him just blowing up blockers. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, the very first play on his huddle highlights, it was they handed the ball off to a running back and they had a fullback blocking for him. And he just, I'm talking about bodied this fullback, and then
I was about to say he tackled both of them at the same time. He tackled them at the exact same time. It was outrageous. And guys, if you're looking for these huddle highlights, I don't want to, we do this audio only podcast. We can't really we can't visualize this stuff for you, but 247 has all the huddle highlights on all the players' profiles that have them. Go check out some of these underrated players and let us know what you think. But yeah, Brandon, he tackled both of them immediately. It was like set, hut, handoff, bang. He was right there, and I love it. And I think he redshirts, Brandon. Let's be honest here. You're coming in as not even a top 1,200 recruit. You're going to redshirt, especially at a place like Louisville. And I think after 1 to 2 years of weight training, development, practice, just pure development as he ages and grows into his body, I think Craig is going to be one of the best ACC defensive linemen, outside linebackers, Buck, whatever he ends up projecting. I don't want to project how he grows. That's outrageous to try to guess, but I think he projects as a late round draft pick for me. I can see him going 3rd, 4th, 5th round, something like that, if everything goes according to plan, which I'm sure Craig is going to try his best. And a lot of these underrated guys, so I just want to say this. A lot of the guys who you might not know of that were very, very under-recruited come in with a chip on their shoulder, and they're the guys you have to watch out for, because those are the guys that are going to be in the weight room every day. Those are the guys that are going to be trying to make the team, because they're not guaranteed a spot on the team. If you recruit a 5-star, he knows you ain't cutting them.
Right.
He knows that, and you see a lot of 5-stars come in, and then you hear the reports of them transferring because they didn't want to work hard enough, or they thought they were just guaranteed the starting job. But I don't think you have to so everyone talks about de-recruiting. I'm sure Brandon's heard it. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have heard it, where you have to de-recruit players when they get to campus. Well, when you're the 1,300th ranked player in the country, I don't think you have to de-recruit him very much.
No,
he knows that his leash is much shorter than the best player in the class or a redshirt from last year. I mean, he knows he has to prove to the coaches every day that he belongs on a team and he deserves a jersey number and deserves to be on that field. So I think Craig's going to be amazing, and he might be the lowest ranked recruit I've talked about, but he's one of the ones I'm more confident about will turn out to be an excellent player.
Absolutely, Zach. And I agree with you 1,000,000%. It's very exciting to see this Louisville program bounce back from the depths where they were when Lamar Jackson left to now. It's very exciting to see that this program's turned everything around.
Yeah, guys. I mean, ACC's coming up. I mean, Pitt, Louisville, Virginia Tech. Virginia just had a good season. Duke's been kind of on the upswing. I mean, we already have Clemson. Florida State looks like it might be turning stuff around. Miami's right there. The ACC is going to be good in the upcoming years. I don't want to hear that schedule argument anymore because there's some good teams chilling in the ACC. But guys, that is a wrap on the episode. 3 segments, still brought you guys an hour though. We deliver week in and week out. But rate the podcast, subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, man. We're available literally everywhere. If you don't know where to find us, go to our website, thebluebloodspod.com. Links to everywhere you can find the podcast up there. You want to go to YouTube, we're on YouTube, the Blue Bloods CFB podcast on there. Instagram at @_Bluebloods, Facebook at the Bluebloods pod. What am I missing? Twitter at @_Bluebloods. Find us everywhere, man. We post clips to our episodes. We post all kind of different stuff. Articles coming y'all's way. Big announcements coming y'all way. So stay tuned for that. Listen, man, we appreciate all of you guys listening. But until then, guys, we will be back Thursday with another episode. But keep subscribing, keep listening, bro. We'll keep dropping episodes. But for right now, we out.